Now, if you are one of the 52,000 Americans with a numbered Swiss bank account at UBS, you'll want to pay close attention to this report. The government of Switzerland said it would seize UBS data in order to stop the U.S. Justice Department from getting the names of depositors in a crackdown on tax evasion. Here to talk more about this ongoing multi-billion-dollar saga is Bloomberg News reporter David Voriakis. David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
In essence, basically, the Swiss government here, as you were saying, is defending its sovereignty.
The Swiss government has a strong interest in protecting Swiss bank secrecy, and they are trying to prevent the Justice Department from getting 52,000 names that it's seeking through a lawsuit in federal court in Miami.
Has UBS already given up some names, though?
UBS has handed over 250 to 300 names to the Internal Revenue Service, and as a result, the U.S. government has prosecuted some U.S. taxpayers who didn't disclose their offshore accounts that UBS held overseas.
So just to make it clear, it's not illegal, obviously, to hold an offshore account.
It's not illegal to have an offshore account. What's illegal is if you don't disclose it to the IRS, if you don't disclose the existence of the account or declare that income to the IRS. And the IRS believes that UBS has 52,000 accounts for which U.S. taxpayers have not declared the existence of those accounts or the income from those accounts. And so this litigation that's going on in Miami is the mechanism by which the U.S. is trying to get the identity of those taxpayers.
How is the U.S., obviously the U.S. has been in close negotiations with the banks on these issues and in courts of law with the banks on these issues. Are they dealing with the Swiss authorities directly?
They are. There's sort of two branches of the government. There's the State Department that's trying to negotiate a new tax treaty with Switzerland, and then there's the Justice Department, which is using a bit more of a blunt instrument through this litigation that's trying to get the names. The Swiss government is trying to appeal to diplomacy and say, let's resolve this through diplomacy and not through litigation. And it's not really clear how this is all going to play out.
Now, the Swiss government isn't just holding these names, because of on philosophical grounds, right? I mean, there are profit reasons driving bank secrecy.
It's a very big business in Switzerland, and historically, for several decades, it's attracted capital from around the world. And the U.S. has made some inroads into Swiss bank secrecy, and it's clear that the Swiss government doesn't want that to progress much further.
Now, and we've seen also, as you and I were talking about during the commercial break, around the world, really, some of the big countries in the G8, for example, in Western Europe, cracking down on other tax havens, as they're called, Jersey Islands, Channel Islands, negotiating with Liechtenstein and Luxembourg. Right. I mean, it's become a real priority for these big governments to try and get money out of these tax havens.
It has. The tax havens have made some progress, or the United States has made some progress with the tax havens in trying to negotiate new treaties, and they sort of go country by country to get this accomplished. In this case, Switzerland is maybe the crown jewel that the U.S. is going after, and UBS is the one bank they're really attacking publicly now.
And do we know how much money is involved, for example, in UBS? I mean, 52,000 bank accounts seems like a lot, but obviously some are going to have very little money and some will have...
What's come out in earlier aspects of this litigation is that UBS held about $20 billion in U.S. assets and was making about $100 million a year in fees on those assets. Essentially, UBS admitted earlier this year that over a 7-year period it helped thousands of U.S. taxpayers evade U.S. taxes, and it was making considerable fees while it was doing that.
For which it was then fined, I believe, $780 million.
It agreed to pay $780 million in penalties, and it faces the possibility of prosecution. It's essentially on probation for a year and a half, as long as it complies with a series of reforms that it agreed to make.
Somehow it reminds me of school, but it's obviously a much bigger picture deal. David, thank you so much for joining us. David Voriakis, Bloomberg News reporter.